Hello everyone, my name is Nex, and today I'm going to show you my large-scale melon and pumpkin-based flying machine bonemeal farming setup that of course uses composters to turn the melons and the pumpkins into bonemeal. Now, as you may be able to tell from the size of this thing, this is of course very laggy and very big for what it does. It's 24 flying machines in total. And they cover almost the entire ticking area. So as you can see, there are some corners missing, but it's almost the entire thing, as you can see. So we have basically a strip on each side, and there should be 3 more chunks or so around here that could be filled out, but I don't think it's really worth it. And yeah, it looks very nice nonetheless, just like this. Now, this setup basically makes sure that the flying machines collect all the melon and pumpkin drops. As you can see, they have minecarts attached to them, and you might have already previously seen this in my single flying machine melon and pumpkin farm design. And what basically happens is that the rails break the melons or the pumpkins, and the hopper minecarts that are on the rails get pulled along and they collect the drops immediately. And then they get to this unloading station. I'm just gonna turn this off for a second. And basically the way it works, it detects if there are still items flowing through. And I'll just have to turn my volume down because this is really loud. And basically when it detects that nothing is in there anymore, it retracts the pistons and relaunches the flying machine. And this works individually for each flying machine, so they all have an individual return station. Of course, there is a main toggle right here in the center, and that main toggle is basically what allows us to turn all flying machines off. And as you can see, they are in a resting position. They are just sitting there doing their stuff, and yeah, this is pretty cool. So what happens down here is that these flying machines unload their drops into these droppers, and these droppers of course put out all their drops, and it all goes down this water stream where it all goes into these composters. And this happens for each flying machine. They all will end up one way or another in these composters, and in the end we turn everything into bone meal. Now, this is an extremely overpowered melon and pumpkin farm on its own, but of course I only made it this big so that we can properly farm bone meal. And this main lever right here in the center is basically just turning off all these pistons that normally would retract and launch the flying machines again. That way we make sure that this can be completely turned off, because as you may know, flying machines completely break when you unload them 99% of the time. And yeah, this is pretty much the basic idea of this farm. It's pretty straightforward. And while you could technically vertically stack this to put more on top, I would not recommend it because it is already very laggy even for my PC when you launch all of these at once. Now, you could technically offset those or make actual unloading stations on the end, but I didn't really bother because I don't have that much time. While it is a cool idea and it can be done, I'll leave that to others. And speaking of which, there's a world download for this in the description. So this yields about 18 stacks of bone meal per full harvest. Now, of course, if you leave this running all the time, you will have less per harvest because it will not have fully grown, but that's not really an issue because when it does relaunch, it usually is grown enough so that it's not really too much efficiency lost. And yeah, it's still pretty much a massive thing, and it's not really a good idea for anyone to build in survival. I just think that this is a nice way to farm bone meal without any sort of forced update thingies, so no zeroticks, etc. Now, of course, while using this farm, you have to make sure that you always stand in this center chunk right here. This is where there's nothing. Of course, you could also put a floor right there or something. I had one before, but I removed it. But you always have to stand within that chunk to make sure that these flying machines stay loaded. This is basically aligned so that if you are in the center, all chunks in those directions are loaded. And what you do have to keep in mind as well is that technically there are 3 chunks loaded as well, so 1, 2, 3 right here, I believe, but I did not include those as actual flying machine harvesting platforms or whatever, because it would be a little too complicated and it's already massive enough as it is. I used this flying machine design instead of the very popular terracotta fly because in my opinion it looks way better. First off, that's not really a factor for most people. It is not faster than the terracotta fly, but the return stations are so much simpler. If you look at them, they are literally just an observer and a redstone line and of course obsidian to stop the flying machine. But apart from that, this is literally the entire return station. And the unloading station is also fairly simple. And of course down here next to the droppers, we have a comparator detecting the actual output from the dropper, and this will activate a observer clock, which will of course fire out all the items inside the droppers. And this is on all of the 24 droppers, and like I said, will be overridden by this main lever if needed. So, moral of the story, is this really worth to build for most people? I would say no, unless you're crazy and like me, because I think this is a very interesting project to work on. And of course, there will not be a tutorial on this because this is way too massive to make a tutorial about. But like I said, there is a world download in the description, so you can replicate it from there. And while it does look complicated, the layout is not as complicated as you think. And if you still find it complicated, well, you can just deconstruct it. And since it's a Word download, you can always import a new one and ignore all the damage you've done before and deconstruct it even further. And yeah, it's pretty simple. Now, I want to talk a little about this flying machine engine. This flying machine engine is very good. I used it in my previous Melon and Pumpkin farm design and also in my annoying bell machine video. And I really like it because, quite honestly, it doesn't really need a complicated return station like the terracotta flyer from Blazing King. And yeah, this is much simpler. It is, of course, two-way and it is also very reliable. Now, how this works is basically, it's just the one on Java. You know, the very simple one. Let me just rebuild it, and of course that won't work on Bedrock because of several missing features. Now, this one right here, this works on Java Edition, but not on Bedrock Edition, because on Bedrock Edition there is no quasi-connectivity, which would power those pistons down here with the observers. Of course, you can make up for that by facing these observers down, but the main missing feature is that there is no block dropping. And we basically make up for this by extending a piston whenever it gets pushed forward. And as you may know, sticky pistons are not able to retract moving extended pistons. So let me just demonstrate this for you. So if I just put a slime blocker right here, let's extend this, and as you can see, it will not be able to retract this slime thingy because there is the extended piston. See that? Now this is how we make up for the lack of block dropping with this flying machine right here. So as you can see, if we extend that, this will fire, this will basically extend, this will not be able to retract it, and this will retract it, however. And this is how this flying machine works. So as you can see, it extends that, and that is not able to pull it back. And yeah, this is a very potent two-way flying machine. Also works the other direction, of course. And as for credit, I don't know who the original creator of this was, but this was shown to me, and I mostly know of this design thanks to Chef. So thank you very much, Chef, because this flying machine design is awesome, and I think everyone should be using that engine. And if you're wondering why this piston is facing up and this is facing sideways, technically both could be facing sideways, but I just made the piston face up so that this can properly go out like this and doesn't have to be indented or something, which would look weird. And yeah, it's really just to make things more practical. It doesn't really have any reason for being upwards, besides it's looking nicer. And of course, if you want to, you can replace all those hoppers and composters with normal ice and then have all the items go to you. And this will also be a very potent melon and pumpkin farm. Now, I did not test this for exact rates for neither melon, pumpkin, or bonemeal, but it is safe to say that this will outproduce anything you've ever seen otherwise on Bedrock Edition. unless you have built something bigger yourself. But I mean, for the average player, this is pretty much the biggest you will ever need or see. And like I said, of course, if you are a mad lad, you can stack this vertically, but please don't do it, because I'm pretty sure that your device won't like it, even a beefy PC. Alright, so that's pretty much it. No block by block tutorial, but I explained most of the things, and there is a Word download, so if you do want to build this, although I highly don't recommend it, there's a Word download in the description. I think it is a nice alternative to using zerotick, which might feel cheaty to some people, and it's still a very potent thing to build for Bonemeal. And yeah, this is pretty great in my opinion. Now, I would like to thank you for watching this video and hope that you found it very informative and interesting and that you find use in it. And yeah, this is pretty cool in my opinion. Make sure to subscribe because I keep interesting content like this coming regularly. And yeah, these will all be uploaded on my channel, and as far as I know, there is not much Bedrock on YouTube. So, Bedrock Edition content is always appreciated, I say. And I think that's why you should subscribe. That almost sounds like an ad, but whatever. So, yeah, thank you very much for watching. My name is Nex, and bye bye.